Welcome to the Sparks Heritage Museum's digital lecture series, where today we welcome Mr. Pete Menefee, legendary award-winning costume designer who has graciously agreed to speak to us today on his amazing career. My name is Christine Johnson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Sparks Heritage Museum. We thank you for joining us today and invite you to visit the Sparks Heritage Museum, where we are featuring new exhibits, a soon-to-be open research library, an expanded gift shop with wonderful items to consider for your Christmas shopping. And if you are enjoying our efforts and our programs, please consider joining us as a member to support our museum. The Sparks Heritage Museum is a nonprofit organization that relies 100% on admissions, donations, and memberships to operate, and you can sign up at the museum or by downloading our online form. Also consider supporting the museum as a volunteer, and be sure to check out our website at thesparksmuseum.org for more information on upcoming programs and events. Visit the museum before the end of December to see the current exhibit graciously organized by Karen Burns of Karen Burns Productions. The exhibit features costumes in Karen's collection and was supported by materials loaned by Mr. Tom Gordon of Emirage Sound Lab here in Sparks, Nevada, with artistic contributions made by Rosita Todorova in the art department at Truckee Meadows Community College. The exhibit would not be possible without Karen, and we would like to say special thanks here to her. Karen Burns was a performer in Hello, Hollywood, Hello from 1979 to 1981 and was the first local dancer to be cast in the show. Karen is the owner of Karen Burns Productions and manages a collection of over 1,200 historic costumes from Hello, Hollywood, Hello, as well as other costumes of notable interest. The museum exhibit features several pieces from Karen's collection, which will be discussed here today, having been designed by Pete Menefee. And in addition, the museum's exhibit includes some of the awards presented to Karen in recognition of her efforts in preserving the history and heritage of the glamorous entertainment era that once dazzled the audiences here in casinos across the Nevada landscape, with special focus in Northern Nevada. Hello, Hollywood, Hello is a show now long gone, but fondly remembered by many in our local community today, many of whom are joining us right now for this digital program with the man behind the glitz and glamour, Mr. Pete Menefee. Mr. Menefee is a three-time Emmy Award-winning costume designer who began his career as a dancer, performing in movies from Viva Las Vegas with Elvis and Anne Margaret to Walt Disney's Mary Poppins as a chimney sweep. The 3 Emmy Awards presented to Mr. Menefee include achievements for costume design for the Winter Olympics in 2002, outstanding costume design for television series for The Big Show on NBC, and in 1987, the Las Vegas All-Star Special on ABC with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. Mr. Menefee worked as a costume designer for Hello, Hollywood, Hello, and designed many of the costumes for the show. The costumes currently on exhibit at the Sparks Heritage Museum include the prototype costume designed for Kiss to consider, which was ultimately adapted and inspired the costumes in the Kiss Dynasty Tour in 1979. Without further ado, I want to officially welcome Mr. Menefee, who joins us today from his home in the Hollywood Hills. Mr. Menefee.
Hey, how are you?
Thank you so much for joining us here today. Here is your introduction slide, Mr. Menefee, a conversation with a costuming legend, and you certainly are, and I certainly appreciate your time with us today.
You're welcome. I hate being called a legend, though.
Well, I think there's worse things to be called, but I would take legend all day long. I've
been called those as well, I'm sure.
Well, since I hit on the fact that we have a variety of people that are watching this webinar, many of whom were associated with the show and worked, performed, or otherwise were connected with it. Can you speak a little bit to how your time here in Northern Nevada, how long were you actually here? And can you speak to the last time you were here maybe?
Well, the last time I was there was the best, because I really got to meet all the people that still live there, and generous, lovely people, talented people that were in the show. And we had a wonderful 3-day reunion, which was really extraordinary. It was very touching to see everybody again. I hope we get to do it one more time. But my first experience in Reno, the first time I'd ever been hired by Don Arden, I'd done a lot of work in LA and New York. I certainly hadn't fallen off the turnip truck. But Don hiring me for Hello Hollywood Hello literally opened the entire world for me. All of a sudden, I was flying to Paris. I had my own jeweler, Jacques Ricoeur. I had the best feather shop in the entire world, Maison Favrier. And I had Miss Bluebell to show me all over Paris, which was a real help because my French is zippo. Even now, after all these years, all I know is cabaret French, boucle d'oreille and soutien-gorge. I can do all the colors and feathers and stuff, but I still can't order food properly, which is a real drag in Paris, I'll tell you. But my first experience with Don was I had to do the same thing all the dancers and singers did. I had to audition for him. And Bob Mackie and Ray Ogden had to do it too. I mean, as well known as both of them were when they did Hallelujah Hollywood. Don would interview us. You'd bring your sketches in and do your dog and pony show. And then Don would ask you to draw like 4 or 5 sketches on spec. You weren't paid, you weren't hired, but he would give you a theme and then you would knock some stuff out, and a week later you'd bring it in, and he could see if you were someone he wanted to work with and what your eye was like and everything. But Don never bought a pig in a poke, as any dancer or singer can tell you from the auditions. His auditions were legendary.
Don Arden, it was his show. He was the producer, right?
Yeah, he was the producer. He was the gentleman that put it together in his head. We were all the pieces of the puzzle that he put together for an audience. He was extraordinary. When I was a dancer, I worked for a lot of brilliant choreographers and directors, but I've never worked with anybody who had Don's ability to block a show and put a show together, ever in my life. No one could come close to him. He has kind of a bad rap because he was tough, but as far as I was concerned, he was always a gentleman with me. And with most of the kids in the show, they were like his children. He cared a great deal for them. But the only time you would get in trouble with Don is if you were not being professional or if you weren't doing your best. His auditions were extraordinary. The people had to be, number one, a certain height. They had to be able to really dance or sing. And even more than that, they had to really sell on stage. If they didn't have all of those things going for them, anybody who was hired for the show should be very proud because they passed some extraordinary barriers. And it was a privilege to work with them. Where else in your career are you going to get 148 people that look like that are talented, that can perform? It was always a joy to even dress rehearse the show because the kids always did it 100%. It was thrilling. It was, at that point, Hello Hollywood Hello was the biggest show in the world on the biggest stage in the world. It was bigger than Beirut, which was the largest before that. An extraordinary show, and it was a real feather in Reno's cap, I'll tell you. We were in Time magazine. We were all over the place. It was very, very exciting.
I think a lot of people still hold a lot of nostalgia for it. And I was a kid when I got to see it. And it was the thing that my parents would, when somebody would come to town, you took them to Hello Hollywood Hello. It was part of our community. Thousands of people were associated with this show and it became world famous.
Yeah,
and did. With that leads me to actually the exhibit. And if you wouldn't mind, I will focus here. This is our title slide called When the Stars Align, Kiss Meets Hello Hollywood Hello. And we had just end of September down the street from the museum in Sparks, Nevada, the rock band Kiss were on display at an amazing concert. And we just took the opportunity. In fact, again, I shout out to Karen Burns, who had the idea and said, we can't miss this opportunity to share this story that KISS is connected to our local Northern Nevada community and how
Very
is
much.
the costumes. And so that leads me to a next statement here. The Sparks Museum is currently featuring this exhibit. It will run till the end of December. And can you speak a little bit about exactly how this happened? How did the KISS meet Hello Hollywood Hello?
I was only half of the design team. Don hired me at first only to do the finale, which was an MGM circus. And my friend Bill Campbell, who had done Disney on Parade, brilliant designer, wonderful, wonderful designer, and a good friend, did the opening with the airplane landing on stage, which was really extraordinary. If you were in the wings, it burned rubber when it stopped. It was really unbelievable. And he also designed San Francisco. And the fourth number was going to be Ben-Hur. I like design challenges, but Ben-Hur didn't seem like a very good idea to me. I mean, it's got leprosy, a big horse race, and a crucifixion for a finale. And that doesn't sound much like good cabaret to me. I used to get on my knobby knees and pray to God that Don gave Ben-Hur to Bill. I didn't want to do it. But then Star Wars came out that spring. And all of a sudden, space became very, very important and hot. So Don changed his mind from Ben-Hur to a space number. And he did give that to me. And it was an extraordinary chance. I had never worked with plastics before, with molded plastic. It was like a college education designing it. And I had so much fun. And he really kind of let me go crazy with it. We had a Crystal Kingdom. We had nude female robots, of course, being a nude show, topless female robots that you'll see in a second. And we had an underground as well with monsters and all kinds of craziness. Well, there's on the right is one of the robots. And I think she's covered up for Reno in the museum, but you'll see a better version of her in a second. And on the left, of course, it was the 70s, so we had a space disco. And this was one of the male dancers that worked in it. It was a lot of fun to do. I had a great time. And after the show had opened, I worked for 35 years with Bob Mackie. We worked out of Bob's shop together, and we've designed together, and we're good friends. And Cher was going with Gene Simmons. And of course, Bob had done all of Cher's clothes forever and ever, and wonderful, wonderful stuff. And Cher was interested in Bob designing the Dynasty tour, which was coming up, which was going to be Kiss's, I think, farewell tour in 1979, if you can believe that. I don't think Bob was interested in doing it. I think he thought Kiss was already pretty established. And he suggested to Gene that Gene fly up to Reno and look at my space number. He said, look at what Pete Menefee's done in the space number. He said, a lot of it's really freaky. It's right up your alley. So Gene and Cher flew up, and Gene indeed looked at it and hired me. Well, Bob and I had the same, there they are. They're my guys doing the Dynasty tour. Gene had a wonderful idea of adding color to them for this tour. I think it's the only time we've ever really done it. My telephone's going.
Your fans awake.
My fans, yeah. Gene was interested in adding color, which I thought was a great idea because, you know, they're all like superheroes anyway. I mean, they look like kids' toys on stage. So I had a great time doing that. But Bob and I shared the same manager, and Phyllis Rabb. And Phyllis called me one day and said, I have a wonderful new job for you. And I said, what's that? And Phyllis said, you're going to do Kiss's Dynasty tour. And I said, I am. And she told me the story. I didn't even know that, you know, Bob had recommended me until I got the job. And I appreciate it. I've always been very grateful about that.
And so can you talk to what inspired you specifically when you get a job like this? I wouldn't even have a clue where to start.
It was pretty simple because thanks to Gene, their look was kind of established. They all had characters. Gene was a vampire. Ace was a spaceman. The other lead gent was a lover, and Peter was a cat. So as far as I was concerned, I didn't really want to mess with what their personas were because they were very, very established at that point. All I wanted to do was add color and kind of goose up the way they look and make it more theatrical. And that's what I did.
Thank you for that, because this is, again, such an interesting opportunity to share. And I've actually had a lot of questions at the museum where people said, what on earth does this have to do with Sparks? And I so enjoy going on my tirade of how do you not know how this is connected to our Reno Sparks area. And again, I point out so many people after the show closed stayed in the community and are today vibrant members of our community that were such an instrumental part of making that show go on. And for you to have been, even further connected, and we had Kiss down the street performing, like I mentioned, and that people don't know that there was a local connection through you. I think it's really exciting to hit into that. Oh, here's
one of my nude robots. This was one of our principal dancers, but she's in a tall nude costume, and she looks great at it. The shoes I had made for these women, I was in my rock and roll phase. So the shoes had 4-inch lifts and 9-inch heels on them. And the bubble and collar were the last thing to go on. And once you were in that was the end of the game. I didn't find out until we got on stage that Ray Clausen, who did the sets, had done aluminum raked stages. And for all of you who don't know what that is, a raked stage is a stage that is not flat. It's at an angle. And the combination of the stage being at an angle and aluminum were a real challenge for the women who were the robots. And I'm telling you, if they went down, they didn't get up without help.
I imagine just with those boots.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, their elbows and their knees have great big knives on them. So there was no real way you could kneel or put yourself back on your elbows.
And this was a feature of this show. All of these segments were permanent features of the show. Yep. Am I correct? And it ran from 1978 until 1989, if I'm remembering correctly. Is that correct?
Correct. That is correct. Had a nice long run.
And I think many would say we wish it was still here.
I wish all of Don's shows were still running because he really knew how to make an audience happy. And his shows were extravagant and just poured off stage to the audience. People loved it. For instance, in Hello, Hollywood, Hello, in the finale, they were MGM shows. So Don always had a lion in the show, and the lion would roar on cue. And at the end of Hello, Hollywood, Hello, we had done an MGM circus. And there was a huge calliope that came up in the middle of the stage with showgirls all over it. And the calliope opened up and there was the lion roaring. And the entire cast of 148 people gestured upstage and sang, "Hello, Leo, hello." Well, there are people who've seen the show 3 times that don't know there was a lion in it because there was so much to look at.
I can imagine. So let me take you to some of these costumes. You could explain some of these.
Okay, these are some of my favorites from a lot of different jobs. The young lady with the great big black hat was one of my tall nudes in Jubilee. And this is from the opening number. We had the entire cast on stage. The one on the top is one of my favorite jobs to do. It was for a movie called Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, starring Cassandra Peterson, who used to be a nude showgirl at the Lido, still looks and acts like one. On the lower right is an ex-Miss USA, and this was her competing in her national costume in Mexico City for Miss Universe. Beautiful, beautiful woman. And then at the bottom, right up there with the Bluebells, is my other favorite kicking group, the Rockettes from Radio City Music Hall. This is from Radio City's Christmas Spectacular. Wow. It's Santa Claus and a bunch of girls they called, I think, the Candy Canes. Great group of people. And again, an extraordinary long run. I mean, the Rockettes started the Christmas show in I think 33 or 34. And it continues to this day. In
Yeah.
fact, it opened 2 days ago. I sent them a congratulatory.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, I've had a lot of chances. And here, two of my favorite ladies, the Toots in the Knickers is Liza Minnelli. And this was done for her first television special, Liza, at NBC. And then she also opened her act at the Coconut Grove in this costume. On the right is the really beautiful, talented Juliet Prowse. This costume was done for Juliet for Circus of the Stars, which was a CBS television special that was done annually that I did for 19 years. I did this for an act that Juliet was doing with 5 leopards. During regular rehearsals, one of the leopards grabbed Juliet by the neck and bit into her neck. So she was very worried. So we took the costume out and I held it up in front of one of the leopards, and the leopard went nuts, started roaring and pawing at it and stuff. So I had to do another costume for Juliet.
So you dressed her in basically a large cat toy. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Oh my gosh. Well, and that these sketches lead me to a question that I have for you. You mentioned that to me, and I think it's important to share here, that all of your sketches are now archived at the Nevada State Museum in Las Vegas. Is that true?
Well, it's not all my sketches,
Oh, okay.
but all my sketches that I did for Reno or Vegas.
Oh,
And I
nice.
did a lot of other shows besides Don's. I did Splash. I did Radio City's Spectacular Tour, was there for like 13 years. All of those I wanted to keep together. I love seeing favorites. The Lady in Pink is Leslie Bandy. Beautiful, beautiful principal dancer. And the other is, I'm sorry, I don't know the young lady's name, but the other was the one of the programs for Jubilee over the years. And it features costumes from the opening number that I did.
And was Jubilee a show that was run here in Nevada?
It was done in Las Vegas.
So
Yeah.
all of the historic Nevada related costumes are archived.
Are archived, and they're available online. If
Oh,
you
that's
put
cool.
my name in and ask to see them, they've got them all, and they're taking beautiful care of them. I mean, Karen Kaufman Feder was the lady who arranged all that with me, and
That's
she did
wonderful.
a fabulous job. I
Well, thank
really,
you for
really-
helping save what we consider our history here. These sorts of shows are not as common as they once were.
They're
And
not common. They're not common at all.
what do you think about that?
Everything changes. People's idea of nudity now, I think, is very different for a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people consider it an acceptable thing for theater. I do. I mean, everyone gets very hot and bothered about your body, but your rear end is only the top of your leg. And none of us have anything that's different from what you see on stage. And this is an old tradition going back to France, to Paris. And Don Arden was a big part of it. He did the Lido for years and years in Paris. And then he brought the Lido over to the Stardust, I think in late 50s. So he was the father and the grandfather of this kind of theater. I miss it. I had a great time doing it. I really did. Although I've got to tell you that I went to parochial school. I was raised as a Catholic, and I was an altar boy, and I was a Boy Scout. So the first time I had to sit down with a blank piece of paper and draw a woman with either her boobs out or her ass out, I had to just look at that paper for a long time. I was always afraid I'd draw something that would either be prurient, that would offend people, or that I'd draw something that was so naive, because I'd never done it before, that people would laugh at it and say, God, that's, so tacky and what a jerk.
Well, I
But,
think it didn't work out that way. So
No, well,
you got something right.
Yeah. Hello Hollywood was my first nude show, and I learned a lot on it. And designing for Nude Cabaret is like learning another language. By the time I did Jubilee, I was pretty fluent in the language. and I did a better job on Jubilee than I did on Hello Hollywood. Nobody covered their eyes and ran out of the room screaming and laughing when they saw that one either. So I guess I squeaked through. Here are two more sketches. The one on the right was Karen Black for Circus of the Stars, doing an elephant act, if you can believe that. The one on the left was from a finale with Peggy Fleming. This is not Peggy. This was one of the core skaters on a Perry Como Christmas show. Christmas shows and TV variety shows are as far gone as nude shows in Vegas. Everything I did doesn't kind of exist anymore. So I'm glad I got it out of my system when I did.
Well, I was actually going to ask you about that. If you think that some of the influences of shows and extravaganzas like this do still exist in theater and film in other ways.
Who knows? And, a lot of people treasure the memory of these shows.
Mm-hmm.
I do. They'd love to see them come back. I don't see it happening right away. Although it still happens in Europe. There's still Moulin Rouge. There's still the Lido. There's still Paradis Latin. There's a beautiful, beautiful show in Berlin that's a huge variety show done in the round. It continues to do well. But the Europeans have more reverence for the technique than Americans do. I think we always want to jump on to the next thing.
I think you might be right.
This was Nicole, I can't remember her name. She was an actress, and she learned to do trapeze for Circus of the Stars. It was a great job to do. They all learned really incredible stuff: tightrope walking, animal training, trapeze, and the big cape was just for their entrance. They were pulled up by ropes to the takeoff platform, and then they all dropped these big gold capes, and they were in their business clothes, in their leotards, and did the act. But it was a lot of fun. I did that for 19 years. I had a great time on it. Worked with everybody. Two more favorite ladies, and they couldn't be more different. On the right is Peggy Fleming, who I dressed for years and years and years. Beautiful, beautiful woman and incredible talent. I always, from the first time I worked with Peggy, tried to find something different. And we had both seen Jerome Robbins dances at a gathering, and the clothes for that ballet for the women were dresses that went down to the knee, and Peggy had seen it. And I remember asking her if she thought she could skate in something like that. And she said, sure, she thought she could. So I designed an outfit like that for her for a Perry Como Christmas show. And then it just kept developing until I did what she called her nightgowns, which were the dresses that were all the way to her ankle, but split up and stuff. And she skated in those for years and years. I did her clothes always for Ice Follies when she did her cold spots on the show. And she called me one time and said, I've got a surprise for you. And I said, what's that? She said, I'm pregnant. And I said, that's a big old surprise. How long do you expect to skate? And she skated for a long time. And I made her take all her leotards to her doctor, show him what she was going to be in, because I didn't want some kid coming out crooked because I made the leotard too tight. And this was a very interesting costume. She was going to skate to Ave Maria, and she was pregnant.
Oh so my gosh.
I couldn't do one of the long gowns because you'd see her tummy. She had a little boy, so she carried really low. So I did this, which is essentially a loose top with a lot of fabric, and showed it to her and her choreographer, and they said they could work it out, and she did a beautiful number to it. The kids in the cast used to call her Preggy Fleming. And
I'm sure she appreciated that.
I don't know. She has a pretty good sense of humor. And, and she did skate pregnant for a long time. She'd call me and say, I'm not doing laybacks anymore. I've cut out this, I've cut out that. I thought, oh my God.
I can't believe she did it at all. It's amazing talent.
I can't either. Well, athletes are extraordinary people. A lot of women in ballet companies take ballet class until they're ready to give birth. They take a full class every day. And a lot of my friends who are ballet dancers did that. And I think that's extraordinary.
Definitely. What can you tell us about this lovely lady on the other side of the street?
Oh my God, my rock and roll queen. This was done for the reopening of the Apollo Theater in Harlem. And it's Patti LaBelle, of course. This was the first time I'd worked with Patti. And I even got snookered into helping iron her hair into the mohawk on an ironing board. It
That's
was
not a job I would take on.
no, no, no. And even worse than that was when we did the Statue of Liberty. She had another hairpiece that she called her bucket, which was literally like a bucket. It was a round piece that went on top of her head. And we were doing the show live, and she had her assistant run up to the booth and get me like 15 minutes before we were going on the air. And she said, "Patti needs you right away." So I ran down to her trailer and I said, "What do you want?" And she said, "I want you to cut the bucket into the Statue of Liberty's crown." I said, "Patti, we go on the air in 15 minutes. And she said, "Oh, please, I really, really want it." And I said, "Okay, who's got scissors?" Well, the only scissors they had were curved manicure scissors.
No.
So I was trying to cut this expensive hairpiece in pieces, to make it look like the Statue of Liberty's crown on her. She's wild. She's wild. She's very talented, very, very nice lady.
Did you get it done?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Welcome to show business.
okay.
I'm not sure if I saw it today, how beautiful I'd think it was, but it was done and I was back in the booth by the time the overture started.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. This young lady was in Hello Hollywood Hello, and she was in the MGM circus finale, and she was one of my lions. I had a whole corps of lions and tigers, and they didn't have a lot on.
Beautiful costume.
Thank you. Beautiful woman. And these are four of my favorite Rockettes. And this was from the Radio City Christmas show. This was from the first year I did it in 1989, and I did that for 20 years. It was an extraordinary number that was choreographed by Scott Solomon. The women came up on a lift, so all you saw for the first 4, 5, 6, 7 bars was white feathers. It was kind of wild to look at, and a beautiful routine, beautiful routine. I loved working with the ladies.
Beautiful images.
I'm still friends with all of them.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And here are one of my principals as Delilah, with all the pooch dancers working in back of her. And then one of my tall nudes as one of the Philistine princesses that have been bussed into for Samson to take a look at. But he doesn't want any of them. He wants Delilah. We had several Delilahs in the show, and they were all superb.
Is the sketch here pertaining to a different show?
Well, they're both from Samson and Delilah. They're from the same scene.
Okay.
But
it looked like that.
the Delilah and the dancers began it, and then there was an introduction to Samson, and then there were a dozen Philistine princesses that were all different that paraded on, and he only wanted to date Delilah.
Of course, that's the story.
This was one of my showgirl costumes from the end of Act One in Jubilee. This was the first signage that was done in Vegas. Was a picture of a French lady named Mignon in this costume in the wings. All these feathers were made in Paris by Maison Favrier, and it took over a year to get this on stage, a year and a half. I drew it. Don had to okay it. I had to fly to Paris with the sketches and talk about all the different feathers I wanted used on it. This has ostrich, coq, pheasant, piquet pheasant, and ostrich boa. And ostrich plumes, double plumed ostrich.
Could you speak more to how does one acquire such massive amounts of feathers? Is it an international search, or do we have an industry of feathers?
No, there's an industry, and the shop in Paris, Maison Favrier, is now owned by the Moulin Rouge. But at that point, they were independent, so they did kind of everybody's feathers. And you would draw it and get an okay from Don. And then you'd fly to Paris and meet with Giselle and tell Giselle exactly what you wanted and give her a Bible of your sketches. So she'd take notes in her own Bible and keep them. And then the first thing that they would do would be give me a budget for this costume. And then I'd have to get the budget okayed with the suits at MGM and Don. And then they would get the okay and I think a deposit. And then they had their own farms in South Africa. So they would call down and say, I need 1/4 ton of male ostrich and 2 tons of female ostrich. And I know it sounds like a ton of feathers sounds like a lot, and it is, but it really happens that way. And then they'd order the pheasant and the coke and everything, and it would all be farmed over the year. And then it would be sent back to Paris, and they'd start bleaching the ostrich and do whatever they had to do. And then meanwhile, Bob and I would take a model in Hollywood and put her against a piece of brown wrapping paper, big wide piece, and then put a light on her. So her silhouette was on the paper. And then we would literally draw this. And then you'd take all these huge rolls back to Paris and sit with Giselle and some of the women and say, this is the double wings. And it's Mignon's going to be wearing it. And this is a black pheasant. This is, yellow coke. This is whatever. And then they would use those as a pattern and literally iron the feathers in the shape you want. They're really incredible. They're the best in the world. That was one of the things that was such a privilege to be able to do these shows and work with those people, because you learn from them. You learn from everybody. And these people are the top of the game. It's funny because we all think we're great designers and we're doing something nobody's ever done. If you go to Maison Favre and you go in their waiting room, the walls are nothing but pictures. They've done feathers since the 1840s. There's not a way you could do feathers that they haven't done sometime in history. It's incredible. And then they have stuff that I would never think of. They introduced me to vulture and a feather called Rhea. There was stuff I wasn't even aware existed.
What would a vulture feather be used for?
Oh, a showgirl.
Is it a big feather? Is it a?
No, it's about 12 inches long. This is one of the funny things about all of my tits and feathers French. I know how to tell somebody how to twist vulture feathers in French, and I can't order string beans. It's so dumb.
Hey,
but
we all have our priorities.
Yeah, the technique is called fruit monté, and it means to twist. And what happens is when you twist a vulture feather, it becomes like a bottle cleaner. The feathers are all the way around in a spiral. It's very beautiful and especially successful when you use it black. Very elegant looking. The picture of the girl with the great big hat that you just had up a while ago had vulture feathers in it.
Interesting. Do the feathers, are they able to be reused, or once they're on a costume, they're on the costume? Or can they be?
No, they're kind of on the costume. I've always been very lucky with people that run the backstage at these shows. Marianne Freeman did Hello Hollywood Hello, and Donna London, who's miraculous, did Jubilee for 35 and a half years, trying to keep this stuff clean. And there are a lot of traps in it. Anything that's white, like you see on this young woman, lasts maybe 2 years. They can clean it, but then it has to be replaced because the white gets gray or beige or something.
Well, and I imagine just the process that you're describing and the travel and the planning, all the different people involved, these have got to be, just for the production component, these costumes probably cost exorbitant amounts of money.
A costume like you see in front of you, by the time you get the jewelry on the girl, there's wire construction in this whole thing holding all of this craziness up. By the time you get the wire work done and the jewelry and the G-string and the headpiece and the buckram skull and everything, this can easily be a $12,000 costume. And on a principal where there's more jewelry involved, it can go up to $15,000. And that was in 1979. And here's another great kick line. This was my Bluebell kick line from Hello Hollywood Hello, in their clown kick line from the MGM Circus. And look at those women. I mean, the extraordinary thing about casting a show like this is you look at this show and the women look absolutely alike, and they're not at all, but they're all at least 5'8.5" in their stocking feet. And I've got 3-inch heels on them. And look how long their legs are. They're almost all short-waisted and very long-legged. And their legs look so uniform in this shot. To do line work is a whole different thing for a dancer. Very difficult, because if you can kick and touch your forehead, you can't do that. You're a line dancer. You have to kick eye high like all the rest of the women do, or thigh high, or however they do it. So it takes a great deal of discipline to be a line dancer, to do this correctly. And the Bluebells and the Rockettes are both extraordinary examples of disciplined, really well-trained dancers that really have it together.
Yeah, this is an amazing photo just for that example of like
Well,
the
you're only seeing half the line.
oh boy.
In this line, there were 36 women and 12 swings, 48 women. And the funniest thing is, see the white clown hat and
Yes.
the feathers coming off it? So I have 48 women to dress in this. And it's very complicated because all of that foolishness goes on a buckram skull that has to fit each girl. And it has a chin strap to hold everything on. Then the buckram skull has to be covered and lined. And then there's a hard wig that looked like Lucille Ball's old hair, a redheaded wig that was made of dummy hair that had to be mounted on that. And then there's the hat that had to be mounted on that. And the hat had a plastic base that had to be made, and then it had to be covered with fabric that had to go to the beaters. So that's two more people. There's a wire stanchion that holds the feathers up. That's the wire place. Then that had to be wrapped. And then the feathers came from Paris, from Maison Fabrique. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 12 people who've touched each of those hats.
Wow.
Okay. So we started doing them, and the feathers were the last thing to come. So we had all these headpieces lined up, these dummy headpieces, and they're putting everything together on them. And we got to the end of them and everyone went, whoa, thank God that's over. And there was one extra set of feathers. Everybody, all 12 people had miscounted. We only had 47. We didn't have 48.
Oh boy.
And we only found that out when we had extra feathers. And you know how many people counted that every single day?
Wow.
Organizing one of these is unbelievable.
Engineering. It
It's
really is
engineering, it's mathematics, it's, the idea that a show this big gets together and gets put on is extraordinary to me. It takes so many people. We had a year and a half to do it, and everyone goes, oh yeah, well, a year and a half to do a show. No wonder it looks good. In that year and a half, you're working full bore at the top of your game, and everybody around you has to too. You can't afford any mistakes.
Well, and two, I think another point to make is that, even though some of these costumes might be considered skimpy in some ways, the extra stuff going on, like the big headdresses and all of this.
They're not. Anyone who thinks it's skimpy needs to fit a G-string. Know that even though it only has 3 seams on it and 2 hooks, it takes forever to get that right. And if a girl has
all the
slim
extra
hips,
parts with the feathers and the hats and the headdresses, the weight of these costumes is significant.
Oh yeah. And fortunately, most of these women that Don had hired, particularly for Hello Hollywood, Hello, they came from all over the world. They were all pros. They were women who'd worked for him at the Lido. They'd worked for Bluebell in Spain and in Italy and stuff. So they knew what to do. God bless them, because I would have been dead out of the water without their expertise and their strength. It's one thing to dance hard. Look at the girls kicking, but you get all that stuff on you. And the feathers are at least 3.5 feet off their head.
That takes me to this beautiful photo. And I feel like this is a ta-da moment. So it's
it is.
And your photos.
It's the Dolly sisters from the Titanic doing a lingerie show at the captain's party. A friend of mine, Shai Yamame, took this picture. This is not in the show. It was something that he set up with the ladies and took a lovely picture of and sent me, and I treasure it.
It's beautiful.
They're the biggest peignoirs you've ever seen in your life. And that takes a great deal. And both of these women are over 6 feet tall.
Oh my goodness.
And they have 3-inch heels on.
Wow.
All the principal women in the show were over 6, and some were a good deal over 6.
The symmetry in both the costumes and the height of the women was essential for the look from the audience perspective. Somebody has a question of how did you actually get started in show business?
I was raised in San Diego and Hawaii. I was in Hawaii from the time I was 6 until 10. So I was kind of a hick. I saw movies, but I didn't see any stage stuff. And when I was 10, a girlfriend of mine took tap and ballet, and they had a recital in June. And she said, "Want to come to my recital?" And I said, "Sure." So I went to the recital, and the minute I saw a stage full of kids singing and tap dancing, I thought, man, I want to do that. I couldn't believe that. I guess I'd never seen a Shirley Temple movie. I didn't believe that kids could sing and dance. I went home from the recital, and my birthday was the next month. It was in July. And I asked my folks if I could take tap as a birthday present. And I'm sure they both thought, yeah, that's going to last 2 weeks and, they'll be on to something else. And it kind of wasn't. I took tap for probably 6 years. And I started, after my third year, I started teaching the little kids. I was hired to teach them. And by the time I was 14, I had my equity card. I had auditioned for musicals in summer stock in San Diego. I was making my own money. I bought my own first car. I bought my clothes. I was essentially functioning as an adult by the time I was 16. When I was a sophomore, I was doing The Matchmaker at Old Globe Theater. And the casting guy from West Side Story came to see the show, and it said in the program that I sang and danced. He came back to see me after the show and said, "They're doing a movie of West Side Story, and there's a part you'd be great for in it. I'd like you to come up to Hollywood and have Jerry Robbins and Bob Wise see you." And so I auditioned for Robbins and Wise and stuff, and I didn't get it. But 2 months later, they called me to replace the guy that did get it, Elliot Feld. And my dad wouldn't let me do it because I was still in high school. My mom had passed away by then. But I promised my dad that I would try 1 year of college. And I did. And my major was Slavics and my minor was poli-sci, to be a diplomatic interpreter. Good luck with that. At the end of my first year, that June, they called me and offered me West Side again, and I took it. I was touring with West Side, and I was offered a role in Bye Bye Birdie in the movie at Columbia Studios. I quit West Side in the middle of my contract, which pissed everybody off. But I moved to Hollywood and I shot Bye Bye Birdie. I'm Harvey Johnson, the kid who can't get a date. I've been in Hollywood ever since. Since I had essentially always played kids or teenagers. By the time I was 25, I was getting kind of antsy. I couldn't see a lot of casting for middle-aged teenagers in their late 30s. So I started trying other stuff. I tried choreographing. I was an assistant choreographer at MGM for a while. And I didn't really like it. I was asked by Anne Margaret to do her motorcycle act in Las Vegas, and I really didn't want to dance in Vegas because I belonged to 5 unions already. That would have meant joining a 6th union and paying union dues every quarter. So after the show was over, I was back in Hollywood, and I've always drawn ever since I was a kid. I used to draw Disney stuff after I'd see Disney movies and stuff and make little theaters and do all that stuff. And a friend of mine, a designer, Tony Urbano, saw pen and ink sketches that I'd done. And Tony said, "Did you draw that?" And I said, "I did." And he said, "How would you like to work as a sketch artist this weekend?" And I said, "I don't know. What does a sketch artist do?" I'd been in the business all that time. I thought designers all drew their own stuff. So I worked as a sketch artist, and I put a portfolio together and went to every producer I'd ever worked for, dancing or choreographing or anything. And I said, "This is what I want to do." And I got a job as staff sketch artist at NBC Wardrobe. I drew for everybody except Mike Travis on Laugh-In. He drew his own stuff.
Well,
But
that actually bridges into another question we had, that somebody wanted to make sure those were all your drawings that we were seeing earlier in the presentation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're an amazing artist.
No, no, I've drawn my whole life. And when I was working for Disney as a designer, it was so delightful because I would have to draw a number with all the Disney characters. Well, I could sit down and do that in one evening because I'd been doing it my entire life. I knew who all the characters were. I knew Gus Gus and Jacques Jacques from Cinderella. I knew, the cat and the fox from Pinocchio. I can just draw all that stuff. I've been doing it since I was probably 3-4 years old. I always get very shy when people compliment the drawings because I don't like to compare myself to anybody else. I like to meet my own standards because there's a lot of people I think draw a whole lot better than me. And there's a lot that draw worse too, probably. It's like when you said legend, meet the legend, I went, oh, Jesus.
I don't think there's anybody watching this that would disagree with that word. We have two other comments. We have, I hope I pronounced the name right, from a James Lapidus or
Lapidus.
Lapidus. That was my other guess. And
Yeah.
he says, please do a book.
I always tell people who want me to do a book that everybody that I worked with is going to have to die first. Because I know where all the bodies are buried.
Oh, terrible. Well, then I'm going to finish then
Okay.
with one last thing here. And this is a comment from Karen Burns, who says, thank you for all of the memories, and all of your Hello Hollywood costumes say hello, and she loves you. And we all do. I mean, you are such a huge part of this community. Even though you live in Hollywood, we forgive you. And we would assume that you are forever part of this connected network.
I am, and I'll be back up there. You know. Well,
there's another person here, Dan McGee, saying he was on the crew of Hello Hollywood Hello and met you at the reunion, and it was a special time for him, and he's glad to see you again here. And I am just so happy to have been so fortunate to have you share with us, Zoom in with us here today, and I can't thank you enough. And I'm so happy that so many people found us here online and joined us today. And I sure wish you
had a good time.
Absolutely. Thank you for all of this, your time especially. And we do hope to see you here in Northern Nevada very soon.
Great, Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.